Donald Trump goes toe-to-toe with economists there at a one-hour forum explaining his policy for tariffs, taxes, and the economy. And it was a sight to behold. We're going to show you all the highlights of that and try to do a little bit more of an explainer on his strategy with regard to international tariffs and how it might not be quite as scary as all the green eye shade country club Republicans are telling you it's going to be. Also, we all know that crime is down, right? I mean, just look outside your window. No, actually, if you look outside your window, you'll see the crime is up. But listen to the government. They promised you that crime was down. They fact check you if you say that crime isn't down. Except today, they revised their numbers and crime is up. Way, way up. And more focus on Kamala Harris's struggles with the black vote. And it took one smart, courageous voice at a CNN panel to make everyone's head explode about the reality of George Floyd criminal justice reforms. That's all coming up right now. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Thank you all for tuning in to our live stream. We're across all major social media and video sharing platforms, including Rumble and YouTube and X and Facebook, and many of you watching us after the fact. Great, thank you. Why don't you subscribe to the podcast so you always get an alert, not just when we're going live, but also when our additional video clips are uploaded. Yesterday, we had 5 magnificent separate segments for you, and you guys clicked, viewed, and shared the hell out of them, and we appreciate it. Today, we've narrowed it down to 3 jewels that you're going to love. Let's get right to it. Yesterday, Donald Trump walked over to the, the Economic Club of Chicago. It's one of the oldest, smart guy, patches on the elbows, 3-piece suits from Brooke Brothers, the seminars where they get together and try to control our economy and our lives. Presidents often go there. It's hosted by Bloomberg, and Donald Trump sat down for an entire hour to spar with a man who thinks that Donald Trump's economic policies are all bunk. They're terrible. He doesn't like them at all. And did Trump shrink away? Did he say, oh, no. He sat there without notes, without a script, without a teleprompter. He went toe to toe and he slaughtered him. Watch a little bit.
You're also talking about 10, 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive.
I agree. It's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well, just
let me just I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40
if
million,
you don't
40
do
million,
this,
President Trump, 40
chance.
million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened
they're
them
also
tariffs
going to build.
And they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
He kept the jobs here without even winning the election. Think about that. And Joe, I hate tariffs from Bloomberg here. He admitted it. Did you catch that? Watch. He actually jumps in and said, yeah, you threatened tariffs, and they changed their plans. Watch.
Them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right.
You threatened them with that. He just admitted that the threat of tariffs made John Deere change their plans and keep the factories and keep the jobs here. Listen, I understand Republicans of my generation who grew up as children during the Reagan years and Jack Kemp and Milton Friedman and free trade and the rising tide lifts all ships. And I get all that. And in a perfect world, we don't want tariffs. We want everything to be made without any tariffs or taxes layered onto each process or each item that you put onto the automobile at every step of the way. You want goods to be able to traffic across the oceans on ships or on planes, and people to be able to buy them without any governments laying on their tariffs and taxes. That's a perfect world. I think we've lived long enough over the last several decades that we don't live in that perfect world. And as committed as America is to free trade and removing tariffs and taxes and layers of government costs on all of those things, our adversaries overseas do not live in that world. And so we're not playing in a balanced way. And the only way to rebalance these things is to threaten that we're no longer going to give every other company and every other country a free ride. We're going to get more into this in a moment and drive down the details of this idea of utilizing tariffs as an economic international bargaining chip. And yes, if necessary, a weapon. But more of Donald Trump squaring off here toe-to-toe with this guy, again, for an entire hour, unscripted. He's got a script. The questioner has a clipboard there. He's got his questions written down. Trump's just sitting there with his hands on his knees and his red tie dangling, and he did just fine.
What is the Wall Street Journal now? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What is the Wall Street Journal now? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong.
You're trying to turn this. You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong.
No, you're trying to turn. You're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people. There are business
people. You're wrong.
People.
You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff.
It's just a humiliating moment, but it's fun when Trump does that. And by the way, everyone's got a smile on their face, right? I mean, he can utilize his wit and his abrasiveness as a New Yorker in a way that sort of has an impact. By the way, as I keep saying, he's there without notes, without script, without teleprompter, and he's utilizing what he knows about international trade and policies and taxes and decades working in New York, in the real estate world, in the marketing world, in the branding world, and on Wall Street. He's able to engage in these conversations. One must wonder and contrast, how would Kamala Harris do in this setting, right? Well, you don't have to ask. Here's the answer. This was the address to the audience there at the Economic Club of Chicago before they brought out Donald Trump.
The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television. The Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far.
Yeah, she just decided that she wasn't going to show, which is probably smart. I mean, after all, she picked a running mate in Tim Walz, who yesterday openly bragged about the fact that he doesn't know what a venture capitalist does. And he wants to have his hands on the steering wheel of our economy. If the economy is an important issue to you, I hope you're paying attention about the competency of the two people who are looking to take over this country's largest economy on the planet. All right, we turn quickly to CNBC because as this conversation was about to happen in Chicago, the man in charge of Donald Trump's transition team, Howard Lutnick, he is a very successful businessman. He engaged on CNBC about this tariff conversation because I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of people, many of whom would normally be allies to a Republican presidency and Republican policies with regard to economic growth in this country. People who have worked in the business world in America and on Wall Street and in banking, they don't like the idea of tariffs. And part of that is because what I just laid out for you, many of us as free traders and low taxes and low government and let the businesses flourish, we don't like the idea of the government jumping in and putting tariffs in. But understand, for a long time, America's wealth, the government, I should say, the government's income, not government wealth, although the government did make a lot of money, was almost entirely based on tariffs. The income tax that the government now relies on to pay its bills, even though they can't actually stay within a budget. The income tax was just instituted at the beginning of the last century. It's only 100 years old. Before that, how did America pay for its troops? How did it build its war machine and build its weapons? How did it pay its bills? Tariffs. And that was during the industrial explosion of the late 19th century. And it seemed to work okay. It wasn't until the institution of the income tax that things started to change. And now, instead of corporations and countries who want to do business with America paying the lion's share of the treasury to the United States federal government, now it's us. See, they relied on us paying portions of our income to keep all the lights on in those federal buildings in Washington, D.C. Before, it used to be corporations and foreign countries and corporations in those foreign countries who wanted to do business here. Now, we can debate on what's better or worse, but when you think about it in that perspective, I think I know what side I'm on. So here's Mr. Lutnick on CNBC, where they have a freewheeling discussion about these tariffs. And I just want you to think of one thing as you watch this. First of all, imagine one of Kamala Harris's top advisors being able to do this and even have this conversation, number one. But even more importantly, number two, understand that everybody who objects to tariffs and raise the warning flag about all the jobs lost and all the expenses and how much it'll cost, they all assume that everything in our economy and in our international trade will stay exactly static the way it is right now. The only change would be adding tariffs on top of everything. That's not at all what will happen. Economies and trade and manufacturing, it's not static. Companies and countries and consumers react in real time to real-time events that we experience. And if tariffs or even the threat of tariffs are brought into the equation in these realms of conversation with regard to our trade policy and our manufacturing policy, we don't just accept it, we actually change and modify, and things start to shift because of either the application of tariffs or even the threat, the bargaining chip of tariffs. Bear that in mind as you watch this conversation unfold.
And of course, it's a bargaining chip. We can't sell a Ford or GM in Europe. You go to Europe, you can't sell a Ford or GM. Why? There's 100% tariffs. How about in Japan? 100% tariffs. So do you think if we said, we're going to tariff you the way you tariff us, do you think they're going to allow Mercedes and all these Japanese companies and Porsches and BMWs to all of a sudden have 100% tariffs in America? Of course not. They're going to come and negotiate, and their tariffs are going to come down. And finally, Ford and General Motors are going to be able to sell in these places.
How's that sound, Andrew? That sounds...
Of course they're going to come down. Of course. This is just negotiating.
It absolutely makes sense. If you do it strategically, if it's across the board, it creates a real problem. And the question is whether you believe the president is going to do it strategically or across the board. He keeps saying it across the board.
Well, when you're running for office, you make broad statements so people understand you.
Right.
Okay. Tariffs are an amazing tool by the president to use. They're an amazing tool, but he understands, don't tariff stuff we don't make, right? If we don't make it, and you want to buy it, I don't want to put the price up there. It's pointless, but use tariffs to build in America. If we want to make it in America, tariff it, or if we're competing with it, tariff it. But you got to remember, we need to protect the American worker. Finally, someone's going to protect the American worker, and Donald Trump is here to protect the American worker.
Do you think we make a lot of money in tariffs, or if they're used as negotiating tactics? Look, tariffs will come down there. We're not going to have super high tariffs here either. There's not going to be a big pot of money at the end of the day.
I love that story. So which is it? Do we make a lot of money on tariffs, or we bring productivity here, and we drive up our workers here? So it's a win-win scenario. I like both of them. I think what's going to happen is we'll make a bunch of money on the tariffs, but mostly everybody else is going to negotiate with us, and we will be more fair. In 1948, right, we came up with something called the Marshall Plan, right? The world, Germany. And
I want to get to this in a minute because this is critically important. And sometimes I like to jump in here on a clip. This is about 2.5 minutes long, what we've already watched here, or the entirety of this clip. And sometimes I like to jump in the middle to sort of reset because I want everyone to focus on what he's about to say with regard to the Marshall Plan. Okay. But I hope you understand what's being discussed here and you see how important it is because, the objections are, well, is it across the border? Or is it just you? Because if he uses these tariffs strategically, then that makes sense. But he keeps saying across the board. And Luckin's like, well, obviously it's not going to be across the board. If we don't manufacture something, it's stupid for us to tariff it coming in. There's no reason for that, right? And Trump keeps saying one thing that's very important. If American corporations right now here in this country are concerned about tariffs on their products that they manufacture overseas when they bring them back here in the United States, there's a great way to avoid that. Don't manufacture them overseas. That's simple. You don't want tariffs? Fine. Manufacture here. Manufacture here. Pick a state, whatever state. It can even be a blue state. Build your factory. Manufacture here. Are you saying the American worker can't do it? Of course they can. So are you going to pay more money in tariffs when you import things made overseas, sometimes with hostile countries who use slave labor, where you can't look yourself in the mirror at night? Or do you want to pay more in wages and benefits to American workers? And, oh, by the way, help out your fellow citizens by making this country stronger and more employed. It's your choice. And by the way, it's our choice as consumers to reward or punish any company that makes a decision that we don't like. This is an amazing and important, powerful tool here. And I want to reiterate, yes, I am a free trader. I don't like the idea of governments at all on this planet getting involved in screwing up the true free market ideals that we all embrace. But right now it's lopsided. We're the only country who is actually advancing free trade ideals, unless we enter into a negotiated free trade agreement like we have with Canada and Mexico, or in some of the other countries. By the way, one other thing that needs to be pointed out, in just 4 years, the Trump administration negotiated 3 major trade deals, including renegotiating the NAFTA deal. It's now called the USMC agreement, not for the Marine Corps. It's US, Mexico, Canada. He also negotiated an Asian trade deal. There was one other that I can't forget. But how many trade deals have the Biden-Harris administration negotiated in 3.5 years? 0. They've done nothing. It's a do-nothing administration. How many peace agreements have they negotiated around the world? The Trump administration negotiated peace agreements in the Middle East, of all places, between Arab nations and Israel. He also negotiated peace in the Eastern Europe, rejuvenating peace agreements with Estonia and some of the Soviet bloc nations there in the Baltics. Biden administration's done nothing. In fact, during the 3.5 years of the Biden administration, we've had war pop up, while the Trump administration was negotiating peace agreements and free trade agreements. So please don't start threatening me and being concerned about the threat of or use of tariffs if Trump becomes president, because he's the only guy in the equation right now who's actually successfully negotiated free trade, no tariff agreements in major areas and economic areas across the country, or across the world, excuse me. All right. Back to Lutnick here, because this is, and I really want you to hyper-focus on this. Can I just pause for a moment? How many news shows are you going to watch tonight in prime time on boring cable news, or equally boring, appealing to 75-year-old and plus network news? How many of them are going to take 17 minutes to drill down on economic policies, free trade, and tariffs in this presidential election? This is why I love you guys so much, for keeping our news program going, our political analysis show going. Because I know there's a hunger for this kind of content. I know there's a hunger for understanding the issues that are in this election and how it affects all of our lives. And I know that cable news and broadcast news completely ignore you, ignore the issues. They just want to talk about all the idiocy that the corporate legacy media wants to talk about that isn't relevant to you. But look at this. We're 17 minutes into this show, and we're drilling down in a major, serious way on economic policies and tariffs, and the audience is growing as we speak. Good job. Thank you. Thank you for keeping this going. All right, back to this. So important when he starts talking about the Marshall Plan after World War II. Pay attention.
Is going to negotiate with us, and we will be more fair. In 1948, right, we came up with something called the Marshall Plan, right? The world, Germany and Japan were destroyed after World War II, and we wanted to export our economy to them. So we made a rule. They could tariff us, and we won't tariff them. So they can rebuild. This is the
best explanation I've heard of.
So they can rebuild their economy. We rebuilt their economy using something called the Marshall Plan. Yeah. Our economy is so awesome that we'll use it to help you rebuild. When should that have ended? What do you think, 1980? Right? 1985. I mean, why 40 years are Japan and Germany and all of Europe still tariffing the heck out of our auto industry, tariffing the heck out of our furniture industry? Do you realize all your furniture you're buying that's made foreign? It seems crazy. Why? It's because they tariff us and we don't tariff them. It's so.
It's fantastic. It is so obvious, and I didn't mean to cut him off in mid-word there, but it's impassionate and so smart. And you actually heard the panelists who were very skeptical. This is CNBC. They're very skeptical of this kind of thing. They're very old school Wall Street, free market things. And they all said, "Well, that's a perfect explanation. That's so smart. It makes so much sense." It's like, how did we get here exactly? Because after World War II, after the generosity of our hearts and our nation, we wanted to rebuild Europe after they were torn into wars. So we said, I'll tell you what, you tariff our goods. We won't charge any tariffs to you. We're going to help you build. Is it time now, 75 years later? Can we sort of rethink that now? especially now that it's not even individual countries we're dealing with now. Now it's the EU. The whole reason for the EU and their monetary policies over there with the euro is that they want to compete with us. They are competing with us. So let's compete equally, shall we? Let's compete fairly. It's amazing. The second the tariffs become a reality, it's going to change behaviors here. You want proof of that? When taxes are raised on certain sectors on cigarettes. Why do they always raise taxes on cigarettes? Because they want to change your behavior. They don't want you to smoke, right? That's why they call them sin taxes. Now, sure, some people will continue to smoke, but some people think twice about it. When things get too expensive because taxes have been levied on it, you stop utilizing those things. When you find out, let me put it this way. If you found out that all the income you make for working on a Monday will be tax-free, but you will be taxed at 75% for all the other days of the week. Do you think more people will want to work on Monday and make as much money as they can on Monday? Like, I'll work an 18-hour day on Monday, pay me for all the work I do on Monday, and I'll take the rest of the week off. If you know that your Monday income is tax-free and the rest of the week you're paying 75% in taxes, right? That's exactly what we would all do if we could. When you add taxes, when you add tariffs, people don't just say, well, they've added taxes and tariffs, I guess we're just going to continue doing what we always do regardless of the tariffs. No, it modifies behavior. It modifies the way we as individuals operate when we know we have to pay extraordinary taxes. Or on the other side, if we get a tax break, if we do this thing that they want us to do. And it modifies the way corporations behave as well. It's obvious, isn't it? Oh, one other thing from Trump. He always has these great moments that he just throws in there when he's working on the fly, and he was in his element at this forum for Bloomberg. I just wanted you to watch this little thing. He starts riffing on Gavin Newsom in California, and it's gold.
How about this? Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California.
Newsom.
He signed Newsom, I call him.
Yeah. But do you think?
No, he corrected me. I said, that's the first time I've been corrected.
There are CEOs out here. If they said those sort of things about a rival CEO, they'd be sacked. Do you think it's fine for a president?
But they don't have to survive like me. They don't have to go through what I have to go through. There has never been a president that's been treated like me, so I have to fight my own way.
Well, you made a very good job of.
He signed a bill in California 2 days ago that you don't even have the right to ask a person for voter ID. And if you ask a person for voter ID, of course you have to show voter ID. The only reason you wouldn't do, because they want to cheat. The bill says you cannot, it's against the law for you to ask a person, may I please see your voter ID when he votes? What is our country coming to?
I don't know. I just like the whole idea of new scum. I've always called him Governor Hair Gel. It's a little different. It's vivid, and it certainly draws a picture for you. But new scum is elegant. He's good at that, isn't he? I kind of like that whole idea. Oh, if one of the CEOs here had said that about one of their rival CEOs, they'd be sacked. What about you? He said, well, you know what? That's the beauty when you're president of not working for anyone except the people and the voters. Ridiculous. Listen, guys, I'll say it again. If the economy is, and it is, the number one issue facing voters here, less than 3 weeks away from Election Day, I hope you're all paying attention. And I hope you see exactly what's going on here between the dynamic new ideas from someone who's worked in the business world his entire life versus a woman who just has catchphrases and bullet points saying an opportunity economy. And if you ask her what that means, she'll search in her notes to give you some other bullet point that she's memorized. A woman who has only earned a government paycheck her entire adult life. By the way, there's one other person in American politics who has the same kind of track record, who has never actually run a company or even had a job, a real job, for the last 50 years of his adult life. He's only drawn a government paycheck. That would be Joe Biden. And look how he handled our economy. There is a lot at stake in this upcoming election. And as you just said, with regard to the economy, no matter who ends up sitting in the White House, sadly, the fuse of the economy has already kind of been lit. 4 years of a conservative presidency will help a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, forget about it. It's going to be throwing gas on a dumpster fire. You don't have much control over the election's outcome, but you can diversify your savings right now by investing in gold from Birch Gold. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can help protect you right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the US dollar has declined, while at the same time, the price of gold has increased by 40% in 4 years. You think that's a coincidence? Text Larry to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. It's waiting for you right now. You just need to text it for it. You can trust Birch Gold, as I do, to protect your savings. Text Larry to 989898 today. And I know, Kevin, you've got limited connectivity today, so I saw that super chat go by, and I'll go ahead and grab it. Betsy, thank you so much for the $9.99. That makes a world of difference to us, and we really, really do appreciate it. Thank you for your super sticker. And whatever super chats you all want to jump in there with, we always take a pause between our segments to be able to highlight them and draw attention to your generosity for our entire team over there. Thank you very much. And if you're not in a position where you can offer us a super chat, those likes go a long way for us. So please, if you can, throw a like in there. We love your thumbs ups. Oh, we got another one, $4 there from Philip. Thank you, Philip. I would try to pronounce your last name, but let's say Jafaris. But it looks like you need to buy a vowel. I mean that in a nice way. Sorry, I'm just an idiot when it comes to pronouncing names. Thank you for that, Philip. I appreciate it. Give us your thumbs up, give us your likes, and give us a subscribe if you don't mind. It makes a world of difference to us. It really does. There continues to be a focus on Kamala Harris.
Ryan, about how
stop that. Don't start playing. I didn't tell you to start playing yet. Ooh, and this thing is sticking out. Sorry. You know what? Let's just have a quick reset here for those of you watching live. You know, you get to see a show that not everybody else does when we edit together our segments. My buddy Chris DeGaulle, you should follow him. He's got a great podcast, Chris DeGaulle podcast. He texted me yesterday and said, "So you do this live every day? What about all your screw ups?" And I was like, "We don't screw up." And then today we screwed up. Anyway, there continues to be a focus on Kamala Harris's struggle in the Black community, specifically for Black men, for the vote of Black men. You remember Barack Obama last week lectured Black men. He said the brothers aren't coming out to vote for Kamala the way they did for me, trying to shame them, lecture them. You know, as a white conservative man for the last 15 years of my life, I'm used to Barack Obama wagging his finger at me and shaming me because he's so disappointed in my sexism or my racism or my conservatism. But I'm guessing for most Black men in this country, they were a little stunned by that approach. Well, the contrast between Donald Trump's improvement for a Republican with the Black male vote and Kamala Harris's struggles became a subject of conversation on a CNN panel last night. Conservative commentator Ryan Girdusky, he squared off against everybody else on the panel. And watch what happened when he raised the issue of the Ferguson effect. The Ferguson effect, you know, the Ferguson effect is when after the riots in Ferguson, there were major changes in law enforcement strategies and policies, most specifically about having police officers reduce their engagement in certain communities in their usual law and order crime fighting tactics. And the end result was more Black people in those communities ended up being the victims of crime, oftentimes violent crime. In other words, the Ferguson effect was when you try to have the police disengage with Black communities, it actually harms Black people living in those communities. You've heard of this. I know you have. But just watch what happens, because nobody on the CNN panel had heard of it.
Just yesterday, Ryan, about how in the context of riots, he was saying, let's just bring the military into it to deal with American citizens. I mean, that happened yesterday.
Right. But the post-George Floyd riots resulted in an excess of over 15,000 Black male deaths in this country. How?
Yeah.
The surge of violent crime. It was like Ferguson, the Ferguson effect and the Floyd effect.
Respectfully,
Wait, so
you got to explain to me how George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
Because I need causation here.
Yes,
you
because
really are.
what happens is after the Ferguson riot and after the Floyd riot, policemen, in fear of their jobs many times and political coverage, pull back from their jobs, resulting in an increased level of
listen, I got to stop you there because hold on.
You can look at the Washington Post.
Ryan, we got to stop you there because you're literally making a connection out of your own conjecture.
No,
you cannot.
It's a real thing. Look up the Ferguson effect. Look up the Floyd effect. It is a real term.
You cannot.
It's a real term. I didn't make this up.
Invent a connection between two things just because you want that connection to be there.
It's a literal, like a name. It's a real thing. You can look it up.
Right. It could be a right thing, but it doesn't mean it's
all right. So let me jump in here. There's more to this, but I just want to give you a quick commentary because you see what's happening here. They're accusing him of lying, is what's happening. And that woman, she's the anchor here. So she's a CNN employee and she's trying to stop him and cut off. You can't just lie. You can't just make things up because you want them to be true. And again, what he's saying is that the net result of having law enforcement disengage in Black communities post-Ferguson and post-George Floyd ended up with the deaths and victimization of 15,000 African Americans in this country. The number's probably bigger, actually. And he says this is a thing. It's a phenomenon. It's an actual thing called the Ferguson effect or the George Floyd effect. And no one else at the table knew about it. And in fact, forget about not knowing about it. They're claiming that Ryan Girdusky is lying, that he's misrepresented. And I'm sure they're thinking to themselves, what a racist lie this is. Well, watch as the conversation continues to progress. And well, we'll give you the punchline in a minute.
Let's move on because
I'll send you a reading list after the show.
Before we move on, I think
Hold on. I just want everyone to settle down because people cannot hear at home when everybody's talking at once. Okay, go ahead.
No, I just think there has to be a level of intellectual honesty. And one of the things we can talk about here when we talk about Donald Trump is he's actually somebody who never spoke out about George Floyd's death. And for me, it's kind of personal because as a Black man, when you have someone with a knee on their neck for 9 minutes and some change, and you're actually calling out for your mother while you're being suffocated on national TV, and you are a parent and a son and a brother, that goes a long way. The kind of disingenuity or dishonesty for me.
Okay, so first of all, that was a blatant appeal to emotion, which is fine. I guess you got to do that sometimes, but that's not based on fact. That's just emotion. He said, this is important to me because I'm a Black man and I'm a father. And I'm like, okay, fine. But we're talking about facts and data here. Also, I think that the word he's looking for is disingenuousness instead of disingenuity. But, you know, we all end up getting tongue-tied sometimes, right? Of course, the difference is I don't make the kind of money that he does to go there and sit on a failing network like CNN. So you'd think he'd have his act together a little bit more. That said, I don't want to, kick him always down. Let's continue.
You cannot say that what happened during that time period is to blame for the deaths of other Black men due to violence or what have you.
100% happened.
But that literally, and my point to you is that makes absolutely no sense. And I would argue to you as somebody that I'm not coming from a perspective where I want fewer police. I don't. I want police actually to be paid more. I just want better police, more qualified police. I want there to be a database where police, if they commit bad acts, they can't just go from one department to another. That's criminal justice reform.
Okay.
But George Floyd didn't cause 15,000.
And here, before you jump in, I mean, we should know that we're talking about things that happened when Donald Trump was president.
Right.
He was the president. So how is he not responsible for it?
Well, the president doesn't control local police departments.
Well, okay, but you're trying to blame crime on Joe Biden.
No,
but you don't blame.
Okay,
Republicans have blamed crime on Joe Biden, but you cannot. But you're saying that people who died when Donald Trump was president, that's not his fault.
I don't
agree with either blame being assigned to either president. I think
I
presidents
didn't blame Joe
don't
Biden.
have a magic wand and they don't control crime from the White House.
Right.
But if you're going to say that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are responsible for a rise in crime,
I didn't say that, though.
Don't you have to?
He didn't say that. And let me just fill you in here because the conversation began before this clip started. On the Breakfast Club podcast with Charlamagne the God, Kamala Harris was asked about police violence against African Americans, and she bragged about the fact that she had authored a bill in the Senate called the George Floyd criminal justice reform bill or something like that. And she started championing the idea that we need to do all of these reforms in local law enforcement. That's why this issue is even being discussed. All right. So they're being completely disingenuous to say, oh, well, you're blaming Joe Biden. It's like, no, I'm not blaming Joe Biden, but Kamala Harris is bragging about doing these things. And the net result of those things is that more Black people died because the police were told to disengage from these communities. It's called the Ferguson effect. It's a real thing. And you heard him say, I'll send you the literature. It's in the Washington Post. It's in the New York Times. I'll send you everything so you can educate yourself. So, you know, I swear I'm not making it up. Ryan Girdusky's got to act like he's, you know, in some sort of, you know, Wonkaville or something. It's like, this is what is going on here? This is fantasy land. All right. So we're going to let this finish up here and then we'll get to the punchline.
All I will say is, like, we're talking about what the future is for Black Americans. And what I will say is that Kamala Harris supports the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which, again, I have no idea what you're talking about in terms of connection. I will read it, and then I will fact check the sources that actually wrote the thing. But
okay, so she says she will read it and she will fact check the source, which is good. And I appreciate her having a somewhat open mind, although you could tell from her tone that she was being a little condescending. Well, here's the good news. Later that evening, this was last night, and early this morning, Ryan Girdusky actually made good on that and did so on the X platform and sent out links, not just to the Washington Post article and the op-eds that have been written in major left-wing newspapers and publications about the boomerang effect of these bills and these laws and these actions that have defunded the police or have the police re-engage and disengage in how they do their typical law enforcement tactics in these cities, resulting in this net effect. But he also sent a link. She just said that she'll fact check the sources. Well, she should probably carefully fact check this source because it's CNN. And CNN has this article from 2015. FBI chief tries to deal with the Ferguson effect. Yeah, that's right. The two sources here actually are CNN and James Comey, the then FBI director. A year after unrest in Ferguson, Missouri brought increased scrutiny of police, FBI Director James Comey has thrown his weight behind the idea that restraint by cops in the wake of criticism is at least partly to blame for a surge in violent crime in some cities. The tensions over policing and crime came when, for the first time in a generation, unusual political forces have aligned and the nation appears on the verge of relaxing tough criminal sentencing laws. Liberals and conservatives now seem to agree that 1980s era anti-drug laws boosted U.S. prison populations too much, with the burden falling disproportionately on minority communities. Some law enforcement officials, including Comey, are raising concerns that a spike in crime, or at least the perception that the recent era of historically low crime rates is at risk and could hurt criminal justice reforms efforts. It's called the Ferguson effect. CNN wrote about it. You know, one sad circumstance of working and living in the Washington, D.C. area and being in the media, as I have done now for, well, in D.C., going on 13 years, but I'm doing this career now for over 15 years. Or just 15 years, I should say. One of the sad results of being in this profession, and I'll share it with you and be completely honest with you, is when you do these television shows and you meet these people who you've seen on television who are paid to lend their expertise and intelligence as analysts to important issues that are affecting all Americans. When you finally meet them in the green rooms at these cable news or broadcast news networks, or when you engage with them by sitting at a panel like Ryan did here, you quickly realize how uninformed these people are. Just basic news smarts. All of you watching right now actually probably have a better handle on news and events and what actually has happened in this country than the majority of people who sit on these panels who are paid to give their expert, intelligent analysis to things going on. Every single one of the people at that table had never heard of the Ferguson effect, and they had no idea that this thing even existed. And the fact that it was on CNN And the source material that one of the links that Ryan Girdusky put out was from CNN.com. Is a delicious irony. I mean, maybe the people who are paid to go on CNN to talk about topical issues and the news and politics and policy, maybe those CNN employees should spend a little bit more time watching and reading CNN. Although, I'll be honest with you, usually it doesn't make you that much better informed. Maybe they should check out Town Hall, actually. A little bit more happened on this panel, and I want you to see it. Here we go.
So what is Donald Trump's plan for Black America, Ryan?
Well, he hasn't endorsed another platinum plan like he did last time, but he certainly has spoken to Black voters a number of times, and his support with Black voters is at the largest of any Republican since Richard Nixon in 1960. I think that it's not so much Trump's campaign this time has not been so much racialized, where he speaks only to Black voters and only to Hispanic voters, whatever. He's speaking to the youth demographic a lot. Bakari said he only does Fox, but he's on every podcast known to man at this point. Every bro podcast, every comedy podcast. He was on with Schultz a couple days ago. It was a huge audience. So he does speak to young men, period. It's not so racialized, which I think is very, very important, because younger Black voters, if you look at polls, are not as connected to the Black church. They are not connected to institutionalized things within Black America as older Black voters are, which is, I think, part of the generational divide.
I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, Trump is doing it a different way. Do you think it's worth?
All right. It's an interesting question, though. What is Donald Trump's policy when it comes to Black men or Black voters? Which, again, I think the great answer, which is, we don't really have policies specifically geared toward people based on the color of their skin. Frankly, that would be racist. Which brings us to, well, Kamala Harris's just announced policies specifically for Black men. Yeah, she recognizes that she's not really gaining the number of Black male votes that she needs. So she put out what she's calling the Kamala Harris Opportunity Agenda for Black Men. Let's go through it quickly, shall we? Number one, 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 for Black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. Just so you know, a fully forgivable loan is free money. Why do they even call it a loan? It's a fully forgivable loan. In other words, here, we're going to give you this loan of $20,000. It's a loan. Really? Well, when do I have to pay it back? Oh, you don't have to pay it back. What do you mean I don't have to pay it back? It's a loan. Yeah, but it's a forgivable loan, and we forgive you. So you're giving me free money. That's correct. So it's not a loan. Oh, no. It's a loan. Only Democrats would come up with something like this. All right, next, support education, training, and mentorship programs that lead to good-paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. Can I ask you something? How many decades have we heard Democrats say something like this? Oh, we're going to do new job training so that Black people can get good jobs. When has it ever worked? Because clearly they still have to do it. They still have to create these programs. I got an idea. How about you fix the schools that you run exclusively, especially in predominantly Black neighborhoods, so that they do their job of educating everyone in this country, so you don't have to have a special jobs program for people based on the color of their skin. They just get a good quality education that then translates into a good job. Oh, no. We couldn't possibly do that. The teachers union controls us, don't you know? All right, number 3, protect cryptocurrency investments so Black men who make them know their money is safe. What? So if you invest in Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency and you're white, well, good luck. It's a risk and you never know what might happen. But if you're Black, we'll make sure we insure it and protect it for you. That seems racist, doesn't it? Oh, but there's more. Launched a national health initiative focused on the illness that disproportionately impact Black men. I thought they did that under the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, but again, another failed program that we now have to throw more money to do what it was supposed to do the first time they promised us it would do it. And then the last one, it's really my favorite. Legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for Black Americans to succeed in the new industry. In other words, we're going to give you legalized pot and we're going to set you up as drug dealers. That's how they're going to appeal to Black men. I've got a lot to say about that, but since I'm a white man, if I attempt to say something about it, I'll be called, racist. So let's have this guy comment on it.
I was saying, you know, you got to forgive a lot of things about Trump to vote for him. And you said, oh, yeah? How would it go over if he said, I'm going to give you free weed, black guys, go enjoy yourselves? That's what Harris's plan is.
Yeah.
Why isn't that working for you?
Well, the Harris plan doesn't work for me because basically, if black men were a important thing to Kamala Harris, she would not be putting out this little 5-point proposal 3 weeks out of an election. She would not be going out of her way to talk to black men 3 weeks before the election, right? And like I said, if Donald Trump had put out a proposal that said, hey, black men, I want your vote. I'm going to legalize marijuana. Do you know what the Kamala Harris campaign would say about that? It's completely ridiculous. It's disrespectful to black men. And honestly, I don't think that they knew that they were going to get this blowback from the Obama comments where he basically shamed and denigrated black men for not being excited enough to go vote for Kamala Harris. So what black men are basically saying, and look, I'm not going to say that there's going to be this big groundswell of black support for Donald Trump. I think it's going to be more than 2020. But what black men are saying is you can't bully us, denigrate us, shame us into supporting this woman who may not align with what we agree with. And by the way, illegal immigration is also an issue for black Americans and all Americans. And black men know that the Biden-Harris administration, over 90 executive orders day one, loosened Trump's restrictions on that border, which allowed 10 million illegal immigrants to flood across this country. They're not going to penthouses in New York. They're going to working class black communities, and black men see this.
All right, that's really well said, and good for you, sir, in saying it. And yeah, that's the bottom line here. If you're a black man in this country and you're married and you've got some kids, let's say you're 29, 30 years old, and you're struggling to get by, and you're doing the right thing, and you got a job, and you're working hard, you're trying to be a good father, you're trying to be a good husband, you're trying to keep the roof over your head, you're trying to keep the bills paid, you're maybe working a second job just like your dad did to make sure that everybody's fed and everybody's safe. And Kamala Harris wants your vote, and she's running for president, and her big idea is that she's going to legalize pot. How are you supposed to take that? How are you supposed to react to that? Not to mention the fact that Kamala Harris, in the early part of her career, made a name for herself by jailing as many young black men with a pocket full of pot that she could because she wanted votes. All right. You know what? Final word on the black vote here. I'm told by pop culture and the news media that the only place to really find out what's going on with people in the black community, especially men, is to go to a barbershop. So let's go to a barbershop in Michigan. And this is CBS News, by the way. So you know that they were hoping to get an answer that is friendly to Democrats and Kamala Harris. And, well, they didn't.
I think it's touch and go right now. I see shades of the Hillary Clinton campaign with the arrogance of a Democratic Party out of touch with the electorate.
Ooh, that's going to leave a mark. Every time somebody compares Kamala Harris to Hillary Clinton, it's not good. And the word arrogance, I think, does permeate everywhere. The only thing that I would say is where he says the arrogance of the Democratic Party. That's true, 100%. But it's personified by the arrogance of Kamala Harris. There's a lot of that to go around. They're in trouble. They're desperate. And, well, we're here for it. All right. I think we got another super chat mania. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Kevin. Richard Murray, thank you for that $9.99 super sticker. I appreciate it, Richard. And that's a good photo of you. Are you eating there or are you doing a puzzle? I can't tell. It's too small, but good on you. Thank you. We really appreciate that $9.99. Thank you so much. And it really does help us every single day. Thank you. There was more, wasn't there? Oh, yeah, we did. AVP, thank you very much, sir. Audio Visual Protocols. I don't know. $4.99. Did you see Ted Cruz bury Allred in the debate yesterday? I sure did. And he hammered home Allred's voting record on the border and on Title IX issues and letting boys play in girls' sports. He was relentless. Cruz, and they always tell me that Cruz is about to lose. It's just Democrat wishful thinking. But I love that they keep propping up people like Beto O'Rourke and Allred here because they waste so much money on these Senate races against Ted Cruz. And I think Ted Cruz is sitting pretty right now in Texas. Yes, AVP. Great stuff from him. And Ricky Diopchurch. Thank you, Richard, with $9.99. Really appreciate it. Kevin gets to have another Big Mac today, thanks to you, because that's just... Have you tried the chicken Big Mac, by the way? I have tried the chicken Big Mac. Not a big fan. Thank you for that, sir. Well done. I appreciate it. You know that crime is down to historic levels because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris keep telling us that, and the media keep telling us that. Don't take a look at what's going on in your neighborhood. Don't take a look at what's going on with the endless reports that you see in the nightly news and in your local papers, and obviously what's happening in Chicago and Detroit and New York and Baltimore and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Dallas and Washington, D.C. and wherever else you might live. Don't believe your lying eyes. Crime is down, except that it's not. And the FBI finally admitted the truth today. But let's first revisit exactly how all of us have been treated by the media and by Democrats if we dare to point out the obvious, that violent crime has been on the rise all through the Biden administration. Remember this moment from the debate.
Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you.
That's really imperfectly exemplifies exactly how the media has handled this, where David Muir coming in with one of his fact checks. As you know, Mr. Trump, the FBI has said. And Trump pointed out a basic fact, a data point that anyone who works in the news business knew. I knew it. Other people knew it. David Muir willfully ignored it. That the FBI crime statistics database was not interfacing with some of the largest cities in America, and they were not receiving crime statistics from them. They just made estimates, and of course the estimates were too low. And you saw Trump point out, just like the jobs numbers. You see, just 2 weeks before this debate, the Department of Labor Statistics revised a year's worth of job growth that they had reported under Joe Biden, but then gave the real statistics. Oh, we were wrong by 1 million jobs. And you see, if David Muir at ABC News, the moderator of that debate, actually paid attention to the news, well, he would have seen just 4 days before that debate, Donald Trump saying specifically that exact same thing at one of his campaign appearances. This has been something that has been talked about not just by the candidate, not just by Republican elected officials, but by many news agencies and news personalities. But sadly, only people like us who are streaming or right of center, we don't get the big network paychecks like David Muir has, but we do something a little different than David Muir. We actually follow the news, and we're well versed on the news. And well, that sort of thing never gets rewarded with a network contract. This was Donald Trump just 4 or 5 days before that debate.
Kamala's crime statistics are really as fake, essentially, as those job numbers. But you just think of it. I mean, think of it. 818,000 fake jobs they put in order to make their job numbers look better. The FBI's crime report does not include crime numbers from the most dangerous war zones and ganglands in America. Chicago, I'll tell you, the ones that weren't included are Chicago, Oakland, New Orleans, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Jose, which is rough. Nearly 30% of jurisdictions did not report their crime stats, and they were the ones that had the highest numbers. So that's
all right. Did you catch that? He just named the cities that did not report to the FBI Bureau of Crime Statistics. And not only did he name the cities, but the overall number, 30% of major cities in America neglected to report or interface with the FBI database for crime statistics. So the FBI had a completely incomplete number, and those 30% cities were some of the highest crime rate cities in America. So the number was bogus, but it was used constantly, relentlessly for fact checks, just like you saw in real time there in the debate. You know, that debate that everyone assures me Kamala Harris won. Although, if you noticed, she's actually dropped by like 5 points in the national polls and by like 3 or 4 points in the state polls ever since that debate. It's almost like she didn't win the debate, but all those analysts who told me that she did, I'm sure that they're not going to correct the record too. But we've got someone who did correct the record today, quietly. it was the FBI. The great John Lott at Real Clear Investigations, he discovered the change. As you can see from the headline at Real Clear Investigations, FBI quietly revises violent crime stats. They didn't put out a press release on this. They didn't have a press conference. They didn't draw any attention to it. But as John Lott points out, when the FBI originally released the final crime data for 2022 in September of 2023, it reported that the nation's violent crime rate fell 2.1%. This quickly became and remains a Democratic Party talking point to counter Donald Trump's claims of soaring crime. But the FBI has quietly revised those numbers, releasing new data that shows violent crime increased in 2022 by 4.5%. That's a difference of 7%. They claimed it was down by 2.1% when it was really up by 4.5%. This is a scandal. And they reported it to help Democrats, to help Joe Biden. The new data includes thousands more murders, rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. Let me show you some graphical images to show this. Greg Price, our buddy on X, says Democrats and journalists spent the entire election cycle claiming crime is down. FBI 3 weeks before an election revises their crime statistics, showing that crime increased by 4.5% instead of dropping 2.1%. The revised FBI crime data reveals that it originally missed 1,700 murders. How do you? Oh, apparently there were 1,700 murders. Hey, do you see those murders lying around? Where'd you leave those 1,700 murders? Are they under the bed? You got to look under the bed for the murders. Come on, you know how you kids are, losing your murders. Here's a graphic to show you exactly what we're talking about. 1,700 murders. 80,000 violent crimes that fall under the violent crime rate. 5,000 rapes that they didn't count. That's for the revised definition of rape. For the legacy or traditional definition of rape, 7,700 rapes in 2022. Robbery rate, 33,459. Property crime is the big number there, 198,000. This is the percent change from the original numbers to the revised numbers. These aren't the total numbers. This is what they got wrong. Motor vehicle theft rate, 54,000. Larceny theft rate, 113,000. Aggravated assault rate, 37,000. They were just missed, skipped, lost, neglected, never reported by the FBI. And again, they didn't ballyhoo this when they revised the new numbers. It took John Lott, investigative journalist writing at Real Clear Investigations, to discover it and see it. But all those fact checks. Hell, we may have talked about crime here on this video streaming platform you're watching right now. And for all I know, big tech at some point may have put a little comment or note underneath it. Every time we talk about abortion, they always do that. There's always a little note here. Oh, here are the facts about abortion. You know, if we talk about COVID, oh, here are the facts about COVID. That's fine. They want to do extra work and add notes to our video. I don't care. It's something to laugh at, like we are right now. And for all I know, every single time we talked about crime and the rising crime rate in America under Biden, for all I know, the big tech overlords who host this video every single day on this platform could have put a note right there that said the actual FBI crime statistics show a decline in 2022 of 2.1%. But it was a fraud. And we all had to endure these fact checks. We all had to live through them. And they lied. Most of the fact checks you deal with on a regular basis are actually lies. They're not fact checks at all. So I remind you once again, the moment in the debate when David Muir of ABC News jumps in and has to correct the record for our viewers because we couldn't possibly have anything fraudulent said on ABC News, that sort of thing never happens.
Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
Trump was right. The media was wrong. Trump was right. Kamala Harris was wrong. Trump was right. Joe Biden was wrong. Trump was right. The liberal Democrats were wrong. Say it with me. Trump was right. They were all wrong. But see, this isn't about Trump being some gifted individual with some sort of revealed truth from God on high. Trump knows the facts because Trump pays attention to the news. What the hell is David Muir doing? The anchor of ABC News and the man who was given the responsibility to moderate a debate between the two leading candidates for president. Shouldn't David Muir have a better handle on facts and information and the news before he butts his nose into the debate to correct the record? Or maybe, just maybe, if that's too much to ask for David Muir to actually know the news on a daily basis, maybe he should just shut his mouth and let the candidates debate instead of joining in and assisting his pal Kamala. But, you know, it goes well beyond just the debate. It goes well beyond the commentary that we've all been providing as we see in real time the devastating effects of this administration, the open border, and the hands-off approach to law and order. It goes well beyond all of that. It goes to the top. It goes to this guy. While we're fact-checking things, maybe we can revisit this moment from the Democratic National Convention when he made this assertion.
And America is safer today than under Donald Trump. Trump continues to lie about crime in America.
In case you are not used to, remember back in the old days when he was with us every single day, we sort of tuned our ear finally to actually understand what he's saying and translate in real time. He said that, hang on, I don't remember what he said. Stand by.
And America is safer today than under Donald Trump.
America is safer today than it was under Donald Trump, is what he said there through his dementia.
Trump continues to lie about crime in America.
Trump continues to lie about crime in America. All right, so that was Joe Biden in August. And to be fair, I mean, I guess Biden was just going off of the fraudulent FBI statistics at the time. And, you can't expect him to know any more than what he's told in his briefing sheets and what the FBI tells him. So they kept saying, yeah, sir, absolutely. Crime is down. Don't believe anything Trump's telling you. Crime is down. Well, just last night, Biden was at it again. And I want to remind you that the FBI modified these numbers several days ago. It just hit the news today because John Lott at Real Clear Investigations discovered the stealth edits. But the revised numbers for 2022 have already gone out. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, should already know about this. He is the president still. So here he was last night at it was a rally on behalf of Kamala Harris. And he said this last night.
Violent crime is down to a 50-year low. The murder rate's the largest ever.
All right. This is actually perfect in two ways. First, the lie that violent crime is at a 50-year low.
Violent crime is down to a 50-year low.
Violent crime is down to a 50-year low, which of course is a lie. And now that we know we have the numbers, even under the old numbers, it was a lie. Under the fake fraudulent numbers where they claimed it was down 2.5% in 2022, and it turns out it's actually up 4.5% in 2022. Still, that's not a 50-year low. But did you catch the second bit that he had to say?
The murder rate's the largest ever.
The murder rate is the largest ever. Violent crime is down to a 50-year low, and the murder rate is the largest ever. Well, that might be true, actually. I'm not sure how we connect both of those dots at the same time, but hell, it's Joe Biden after all. And he has mashed potato for brains. I miss that guy, don't you? I'll be honest with you. The way things are going with Kamala Harris, is it possible they may pull the switcheroo back again? I mean, honestly, could they do any worse? That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Do we have any more super chats there that popped up? Kevin Wevin, K Mac. Oh, there we go. Susan Cummings for $1.99. Hello, everyone. Change the pick for you, Larry Trump. U.S. Oh, it's another puppy dog. Oh, and it's a Halloween puppy dog. That's a good-looking pit bull. Is that a pit bull? I think it's a pit bull. See, the dogs are small on my screen. Can I expand this? No, I can't expand that today. All right, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyone else? We're good? We're clean. Thank you very much. Oh, Call Me Kaiser says amazing show. Thank you, Call Me Kaiser. I appreciate it. Very nice of you to say. Oh, it's a poodle. Is that really a poodle? No way was that a poodle. That looked like a... That's not a poodle. I'm calling fake news on that. No, that's like a pit bull. It's absolutely a pit bull. A poodle. Fake news. That was David Muir saying that it was a poodle. It's the only explanation. All right, guys. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're back. What day is today? Today's Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow. Sorry. It's hard to keep straight. We'll be back tomorrow. Yes, we will. Thanks for watching. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.